Alrighty, hello there. How are we doing this afternoon? Looks like we've got a few open questions already on the line here. Let's see, some folks wondering if we're starting. Yes, we are going to be starting here real shortly. Let's maybe give folks another minute to come in. I know I've gotten a couple emails. Some folks were having some difficulty logging in. I think a couple of folks forgot the email they used to sign up. But yeah, we'll get started here within a minute, and then we'll be up and running and dive into our presentation on Section 508 compliance and closed captioning. So let's hang out here for another maybe 20, 30 seconds, and then we will dive right in. Great. And so as we're waiting here, just a little bit about our format. So if you can, if you have questions as we're going through the content today, we've got our chat enabled on the right-hand side. So feel free to just sound off in the chat, and we will be able to answer all of those questions as they're coming in. We've got some designated breakpoints, so we'll be able to get this one going. Perfect, gang. Bridget says hello from Madison. I'm from always sunny St. Paul, so Madison's not too far. So hello to you as well, Bridget. Great, gang. Well, let's dive right in. I'm going to jump in here and go to our screen share so you can start getting right into Section 508 compliance with video. So let me know if my screen is coming through here. It should be 1 second, and I think we'll be up and running. Okay. Alrighty. Perfect. Well, gang, thanks so much for coming out today. This is a topic that really gets me excited. So the topic for us here today is Section 508 compliance and video. Now, Section 508 is essentially an anti-discrimination clause. It states that the content that you're serving up, via online mediums needs to be comparable for folks with disabilities, as well as the content that you're giving, everyone else. And with this particular lens today is going to be around how this regulation applies in the video space. And you might say, Sean, well, why are we focusing on video compliance, and what do you guys do in the video compliance space? Video is something that at ILOS we deal with every single day. And you can even ask our 200 plus institutions that we work with. We help on video compliance from everything from captioning to making sure your player and your content is accessible and consumable by folks. And that's really why, video accessibility is something that gets us really, really excited. Now, before we dive in and go through some of the different requirements and the current state requirements, I think it's important to take a nod at some of the other standards and where we see regulations going. So Section 508, which we will spend the majority of our time on today, again, is that anti-discrimination clause. There's also something that you might see called WCAG. WCAG, or Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, revolves around not just video, but all web content. And generally, WCAG has more stringent standards. Now, one thing that actually changed in the last 4 or 5 months was that these two standards previously were separated. So it was possible to be Section 508 compliant, but not meet a sufficient standard with WCAG. That is no longer the case. WCAG and Section 508 have converged into what they're calling the final rule. And I've actually got a link to the final rule, a summary. Don't worry, the actual regulations can get pretty dense, I know. I've got a link to a quick summary that you can check out to understand what that convergence means for you and your institution. And it's not something that will be required until January 18th of next year. So you've still got some time to process and figure out some of those differences, but that is something coming to keep a pulse on. And as we're going through, the presentation today, you might stop and wonder, boy, I wonder if our video player does this, or if our, LMS has that. And there's a document that you can request from all of your vendors called a VPAT. It's a vendor product accessibility template, where you can understand and get a very holistic view of all of the areas in which your softwares are, Section 508 deficient, where they're meeting those requirements, and what their plans are to deal with those potential gaps in the future. And I always encourage folks to ask for the VPAT if they're doing a vendor review, because at least that way you understand the risks. right? You might go in and pick a vendor that isn't fully sufficient all the way through, but you at least know that they're planning on addressing some of the issues that are outstanding. Or if you are kind of rolling the dice, so to speak, you at least understand the risks associated with it. So that's a little bit on VPAT. But now let's dive in. I wanted to really start today by talking about an area of video accessibility that just is not often discussed. And that's the video player itself. Whether you're watching a video on mobile, whether you're watching a video on your laptop or tablet, you're always seeing it through a video player every single time. And yet the video player itself is just almost completely overlooked when it comes to accessibility. Now, we've got 3 players behind us, and one of them doesn't meet accessibility standards for Section 508. But as folks who watch video every single day, can we tell which one it is? Probably not. The 2 things to look for when you're testing your video player for accessibility: 1, can the capabilities be accessed easily, either with keyboard controls, and how does it handle with a screen reader, essentially? So you can imagine folks having, the screen reader side, folks being hard of sight, needing to access video content. And on that side, how are they going to do it? How are they going to be able to, navigate to the play button or to the pause button or to enable, different audio controls and things like that? So making sure that you can process content via that screen reader is crucial on the video player side. And you can test this. There are a lot of free open source resources. If you don't have a screen reader already, even if you're on a Windows computer, you can use the Windows Narrator, which is a very lightweight screen reader that will give you just the ability to experience an application the same way someone who might be hard of sight might experience it as well. The other side relates to contrast. So when you are hard of sight, color contrast is something that can be very important. And you'll notice that there are a lot of different colors on these players, right? You've got red, you've got gray, you've got white, you've got green. And basically, does the video player itself respect contrast settings that you're putting in at a computer level? So folks that need really high distinctive contrast, they can go into their computer and you can set up your operating system so that it will make things contrast. But most video players actually ignore that setting. They don't take it into effect. And that is a big no-no, because if you need something with high contrast, certain colors just won't cut it. And so this is another area on video player compliance that you can look for simply by going into your operating system settings, checking that contrast icon, and then essentially seeing how the player itself responds. Or perhaps there's enough contrast right there out of the gate. Either one of those scenarios should work, but just again, something to be mindful of. So those 2 pieces, again, it's can I navigate the video player, or how can I find this content either with screen reader technology, keyboard commands, and also does it have the ability to overlay with those contrast settings? Those are kind of the 2 elements that I always think about when it comes to video player compliance. Before we dive in to the meat and potatoes, live streaming, static video, I wanted to just do a brief pulse check, see if we had any questions. So I'm going to jump back here to our Webinar Ninja. No, looks like we're good, gang. All right, well, let's keep on rolling here. So I'm going to go back to screen share, and we'll go right back into our presentation. So video. When it comes to video, 2 things come to mind. Live streaming, almost very comparable to what we're doing right now on Webinar Ninja, or things you could be running for your synchronous classes, right? And static video. Static video being, your traditional classroom capture, personal capture, mobile capture. And with both of these categories in mind, we're going to cover a few things. We're going to look at the requirements. What accuracy thresholds do you need to be meeting on your live streamed content and your static video content? What is the availability requirements, if any? Is there a certain time window in which you need to be making this content accessible by? We'll talk about the age-old question, transcript versus captioning. When is what sufficient? And then we'll also dive into scope, what needs to be accessible. This is a point that I actually want to point out was raised as a high priority issue when they were converging Section 508 and a WCAG. And so public-facing content needs to be compliant. Obviously, that's nothing new. But there are 8 types of private or internal content that also have requirements on captioning. And the most prevalent one for us, obviously, is educational or training content does have captioning requirements. So that's kind of the easy answer there for scope. But we're going to go through both of these categories, looking through the requirements with two lenses. The first lens is on cost, because we want to figure out a way to solve the captioning problem without breaking the bank. And the second one is on quality. How can we get the maximum accuracy so that we're not having to manually change things? So with that being said, let's jump right into the live stream. Live stream video. Whether you are delivering a synchronous class on WebEx, GoToMeeting, Zoom.us, every time you're delivering live stream content, you have one consideration to think about. And it's actually a pretty easy one. The consideration really involves broadcasting. Are you broadcasting this class, or is it more for internal student usage? Broadcasted content falls under FCC regulation. But broadcasted content is actually broadcasted in a very traditional sense. Most faculty courses are not broadcasted. They're put in an LMS and they're available for student consumption, not wide mainstream consumption. Where FCC regulation really comes into play is on your commencements, or if you have sporting events that are being redistributed campus-wide and things like that. So FCC regulation essentially states for content that is broadcasted, you need to meet a 100% captioning accuracy. No mistakes are allowed. And you need to be able to post captioned video content within 24 hours of its original air date. So it's a much more stringent standard, but it applies far less frequently. The content that most of our faculty members are making won't fall under that FCC regulation. It's going to fall under Section 508. Original content made by faculty for their classes falls under Section 508. So how can we go about getting this content captioned? First and foremost, Section 508 can have different accuracy thresholds depending on the state in which you're located. We'll actually have an article here that we can share later on in the chat that goes through, depending on which state you are, how your state has defined accuracy requirements for Section 508. But there's two scenarios. Basically, one scenario assumes that you need to have a 96% accuracy, and the other assumes that you don't need to have it that accurate. You can be fine with something in the 80 or 90% range. And so the easy way to kind of sort through this is by looking at how you're delivering the captions. Step one is with voice recognition. And we're all familiar with voice recognition. Whether we're asking Siri or Google to take us to the nearest taco place, voice recognition is just a part of our lives. But the downside of voice recognition, of course, is the accuracy. We here at ILOS have had the pleasure of testing all of the voice recognition algorithms on the market today. IBM Watson, the Google Voice API, you name it, we've looked at it. And we can tell you that the number one API for captioning accuracy, voice to text, is the Google Voice API, which with natural language will get you at above the 90% accuracy threshold, which is really something. Now, if there is a cost associated with the Google Voice API. It costs about 2 cents for every minute that you process. Or sorry, yes, 2 cents for every minute that you process on the Google Voice API. And if you are a Google, a Google school, Google campus, leveraging Gmail and Drive and things like that, sometimes you can get a fixed amount of automated captioning included in your school's Google for Schools package. So that's another consideration to think about as we're coming up into potential contract renegotiations here late in May or in June on that side. So what if I have a higher accuracy requirement than 90%? What if I need 96%? Well, 96% accuracy is the human margin of error. So if you have one person typing things out as it's happening, as your course is being delivered, then you're meeting that accuracy threshold. The only real way to do that, however, to date, is with a real-time transcriptionist. And that will provide you high accuracy, but it's expensive. These are the folks that usually charge between $125 to $175 an hour. And so for most groups, trying to do that at scale isn't feasible. So I strongly encourage you to check out your state's Section 508 recommendations. Again, in our follow-up recap email, we'll send off a link to that resource so you can check it out. And if you are at a different threshold, it might determine which route you'll want to take. But that's live streamed content. Next up, we've got static video. Now, static video is an area that when we think of video, it's usually the one we think of. We think of faculty creating quick walkthroughs or overviews for an assignment, or even giving quick, feedback on things. And the asynchronous nature of static video is great because it doesn't need that real-time element that our live streams have. So with that in mind, let's look at the Section 508 requirements for static video. Now, I know I mentioned before Section 508's interpretations for various states with regards to live streaming accuracy varies a bit. With static video, it's a bit more clear. Static video requires a 99% accuracy threshold on all public-facing video content. And now with the new convergence, this will include that private content as well. So the thing to think about here, again, is that accuracy. How do we maintain that accuracy threshold? And of course, it's hard to talk about static video captioning without talking about what happened to Berkeley and their MOOC. Right? Even just as early as March, they had to pull down 10,000 hours of video content, essentially shutting down their MOOC. And the reasons, if you go into the report filed by the ADA, this is a quick snip I took directly from them, is that none of the reviewed videos had closed captions. So forget 99%, we didn't have anything there. So that's a big red flag. And then the other side is that none of the videos reviewed had any alternative formats for either audio descriptions, transcriptions, visual information. And this is actually a really great, place for us to dive a little deeper on the age-old question of what other materials meet compliance. So let's talk about transcriptions and audio descriptions. So when it comes to transcripts, they're nice but not sufficient. A static transcript that lists all the words being spoken will only actually cover Section 508 compliance in one scenario. And that scenario is where you are just dealing with audio. So in most cases, we advise folks to stick with your closed captioning. If you're captioning at that 99% accuracy level, you're going to meet compliance in far more scenarios than if you're just doing static transcripts. But what about audio descriptions? This is one we get questions on quite a bit. Now, audio descriptions can be required depending on the video. Anytime you are making reference to something in the video that's visual, you need to think about what someone with a visual impairment might need to, well, not even with a visual impairment, what someone with an impairment might need to be able to consume that content. So an audio description is basically using, essentially words to describe what's happening on the screen. So, if you say, hey class, look here in your video, you'll need to have an audio description to say exactly what you're referencing. And audio descriptions can oftentimes be avoided if you coach your faculty up on what terms or what actions will cause them to require audio descriptions and what actions won't. So this is an area with audio descriptions that if you're able to coach your faculty on certain phrases or words that you don't really want to be using, you can oftentimes eliminate the need for them altogether. So all in all, we've covered the transcription area here. We've talked a little bit about audio descriptions. The main play for Section 508 compliance when it comes to video is closed captioning. Before we dive into any of these additional tactics on how to caption, let's actually just take another quick breather here to see if we've got any questions coming up. Any questions on anything so far, gang? Otherwise, we can dive right into those captioning tactics. Alrighty, well, no, hey, looks like we're still tracking pretty well, so let's keep on rolling, all right? Perfect. All right, the fun stuff. How do we get our content compliance? So there's three main tactics. One is automatic. We looked at it earlier. It's lower accuracy. So YouTube captioning has slightly lower accuracy than even the modifications you can make to the Google Voice API, but it's low cost. So it's really as cheap as it can get, but again, you're going to have to make some tweaks to it to really have that process work. Next up, you've got the pay-to-play models. These are folks like Caption Sync, 3Play Media, who charge you $2 to $3 a minute a video in order to get some accurate content. Now, these providers will meet that 99% accuracy threshold, but again, you're paying a couple bucks a minute for all of your videos, so it can get rather expensive. Last but certainly not least, you've got manual captioning. high accuracy, right? You have an actual person, faculty member, student, listening to the video and typing out what they're hearing. This has, in some regards, a low cost, a low dollar amount cost, but there are hidden costs. You have to look at your time commitment. If you're bringing on student workers, the rates that you're paying them. And then ultimately, you have to think about efficiency. Is a manual process going to be able to cover the workload that you're going to be processing through it on an annual basis? And so let's look at some schools and real examples of each one of these. So Automatic, I didn't even list a school because most folks that we talk to, whether they're community colleges or even larger institutions, at some point have used Automatic. It's a good entry point to get into captioning. However, be forewarned, if you're just using automatic captioning, there are a lot of instances where the ADA has come down harder on folks that have what we call kind of, half complete captions than the folks who didn't caption at all. It really shows almost the indication of that you're aware of a problem, but you're not remedying it fully. You're kind of slapping the Band-Aid on. However, you can use Automatic as a starting point. So there are a lot of schools that we know that use automatic YouTube captions, and they'll run all their content through it. And then they'll take kind of the manual approach where they'll look through those caption files and make the corrections themselves. There are tools out there that enable you to change caption files directly from a YouTube video. One that comes to mind that has a kind of a cheeky name is called No More Craptions, and it's a free tool that you can use if you're leveraging YouTube quite a bit to just go over the top of any YouTube video and make some quick changes to the caption file. With regards to pay-to-play, what a lot of folks will do, what Rutgers was doing actually, was essentially captioning content on an ad hoc basis. So as the need comes up, as there's a student who needs the captions, then they go on and they activate all of that all of their courses content, and they get it Section 508 compliant. Now, that works with pay-to-play because pay-to-play is expensive, especially if you're trying to caption everything. And so if you're going the pay-to-play route, most folks will try to caption on that ad hoc, as-needed basis to meet the requirements that way. The last one is actually one of my favorite examples, Texas Tech. So Texas Tech has 100 student workers that caption video content. It's actually probably one of the most extensive in-house captioning operations that we've seen. And with Texas Tech, of course, they were getting really high accuracy, but that got expensive. 100 student workers doesn't sound as cheap anymore as having a couple. And even with 100 student workers, they were still having some issue around lead time. If a faculty member needed a video captioned by tomorrow, you're kind of at the mercy of when you have your student workers scheduled. So there can still be some issues on that side. At scale, they're able to get some remarkable pieces, but again, it was more expensive than what folks traditionally think of when they think of manual captioning. Now that we've seen some of these different examples, I wanted to go in and talk about another potential way to deliver closed captions. And so I want to talk real quickly about Lake Superior College. So you probably haven't heard of Lake Superior College. They're a smaller school up north, and they have a little over 2,000 students. And last year, what Lake Superior College did was nothing short of incredible. They were able to get all of their video content Section 508 compliant. They were able to get captioning on 8,000 videos, and they did this without any increase in their video budget whatsoever. And they did it, as you may have guessed, with iLos. So what we do is we combine video management and closed captioning, and we bring them together. And this enables you to get not only recording, storage, and hosting, but also automatic closed captioning at 99% accuracy included. So you don't have to spend an extra $2 to $3 per minute per video. You just have it as part of your video management process, because that's where we believe it belongs. Accessibility should not be an afterthought. It should be part of the process, and that's really what we've done. And so as a special thank you for attending the webinar, we're actually going to enable each and every one of you with 1,000 free closed captioning minutes with any pilot that you choose to kind of engage with us on. And I'm going to give you a coupon code here right in our chat, and that way you can get captioning. Maybe you're in a bind and you need to get some videos out the door today. You'll be able to do just that. So I'm going to go back to stop share. We'll field any questions you've got, and we'll get that coupon code right on the chat here. Oh, and we've got a question already coming in. So I'm going to write down this coupon code. It's a color, and I'll show us exactly how we can enter it. Okay. The coupon code is yellow for those 1,000 free captioning minutes, so it's just so we don't lose that. But Jody asks, when student workers manually caption videos, what format are they posting them in? Great question. So the two most common formats of closed captions are SRT and VTT. And in terms of distinctions, they're both widely popular, and most players, in fact, I think all video players do support both of them. So if you're wondering, should I use SRT or VTT? There's not really much guidance I can give you there. Both of them are supported. There hasn't been a single standard that's been picked as kind of the winner just yet. Good question, Jody. And any other questions that dive in? Otherwise, really happy to share more on kind of how we can get those 1,000 caption minutes I mentioned, or just kind of connect even further on Section 508. Yeah. Great. Yeah, and any questions at all, gang, either on the requirements for getting your videos Section 508 compliant, questions on some of the captioning tactics, maybe a question on the Google Voice API, maybe you're a Google campus trying to figure out how to get that enabled. Yeah, absolutely. So I have a summary. I'm actually going to send that off, Angela, in the recap email. So you'll have a quick link. I have both. I have the actual documentation itself, which is pretty dense, but there's a nice little summary, and I'll kick that out right with our recap email. So Angela asks, where's that resource on Section 508 and WCAG compliance and their convergence? We'll get that to you guys here shortly, probably first thing tomorrow morning with our recap email. Hey, Jody, thanks so much. Thanks so much for coming out. Before anyone drops here, let's make sure we know how to use that coupon and get that 1,000 free minutes. So I'm going to jump back over here to screen share one last time. Okay. And so from here, I just go to ilosvideos.com. I'm going to click Get Started. It might actually remember me. I hope it doesn't, but it might. Let's see. Yeah, it does. All right, hold on. I have to log out, you guys. Okay, we're logging out. We're going to try this again. Register. So if you hit Get Started, it'll take you right to this page. And if you say you're using ILOS for other in your department and you type in that coupon code, oh, there's my Webinar Ninja code. You type in the coupon code, which is just yellow, you'll get equipped with 1,000 free caption minutes. So that's where you'd enter that coupon. Anyway, gang, hope that helps. And yeah, any other questions that are on top of mind here right now? Yeah, good question. Angela asks, Sean, what do you guys work with? Are you doing streaming media, or is there a physical component? We can actually help you turn that physical content into digital content, but we do primarily work with digital content. Yep. So if you've got anything and if you've got something physical and you're looking to get it into an MP4 or get it online, we can help with that. We've worked with several folks on that front, but we do like to get it online, and then you can caption it, you can edit it, you can get analytics on it, and really kind of leverage that whole platform there. Great question. Other thoughts here, gang? Just trying to. Oh. Bridget says, Sean, we don't want to lose the caption minutes. Absolutely not. We don't want to lose the caption minutes. So let's dive in. Here we go. So all you need to do, remember the password. The coupon is yellow, which is not my favorite color, but we needed a color, so I picked it. And let's go over to screen share. So pretend here for a second that I'm just at the ILOS videos main page. All right. And from here, I'm going to click Get Started, and it's going to take me to this registration page. And regardless of what I pick here on this first option, work or personal, on the next option, what my department is, I'm going to put other, and I'm going to type in yellow. And that's it. Then I go forward, and when I finish making my account, I'm done. I'm going to get the extra 1,000 caption minutes added to my account. Does that help kind of cover things on that side? What are our thoughts there? Did that do the trick for us, Bridget? What do you think? Oh, so no, that's for our trial. The ILOS trial is 14 days. You can run a pilot for longer than that. Most folks will run a pilot for a semester or even a full school year. Good question, Bridget. Thomas has one as well. He says, Sean, what liability do we have if we're using content that is not closed captioned? Must we stop doing that? So the nice thing is that YouTube has automatic captions, but they may not be accurate. So, you could look into making those captions accurate with that no more craptions tool that I mentioned. That's when that tool or others like it is a common tactic folks will engage on. If you're using content that's not yours, the first issue is always copyright, right? So assuming that the video falls under fair use and it's fair game to be used in your course, then you are still at potential risk. If you're unable to make that video Section 508 compliant and a student who has a disability, it takes your course, you are on the hook. Now, if you are made aware of that disability, you'll have a little bit of time to get that video compliant. But if it's not your video, you might have a hard go with it. Of course, there are ways, not that we can condone this, there are ways of porting over a YouTube video into your own kind of video library and captioning it from there. Of course, we can't legally recommend that, so we're not going to, but there are ways to do it, which could potentially get you out of the captioning issue, but could open up other liabilities as well. So short answer is you do have liability. It would be the same as if you were serving up one of your videos without captioning it in that example there, Tom. Good questions. Any other thoughts? One thing actually worth noting is if you have YouTube videos that you're leveraging and you're using ILOS, one of the features we are adding is the ability to port in YouTube content and caption that content. So that is something I should have mentioned earlier. That's a feature that's looking to come out here later this year. Good stuff, gang. Awesome. Awesome. Any other questions? Otherwise, definitely I'll kick out that quick recap. And if you have any other follow-ups, happy to take anything else offline. We can chat. If you've got questions on a particular case or situation, happy to give you some guidance or connect you with some other schools that may be going through the same thing. Yeah, so we do have experience in both realms, Angela. So Angela asks, Sean, what about we talked about audio descriptions here a little bit. What extent do you support that? Is that something that's kind of in the works? So we do kind of two things. So one, we work with instructional designers on the actual requirements. So when audio descriptions are required, because that's a common misconception. And a lot of times if you're aware of audio descriptions, you can help and coach faculty on creating content that doesn't necessarily require them every single time. But in the cases, say you've got existing video content and it just needs an audio description, that is something we can help you with. It's something that's not enabled by default, but if you've got that need and we can scope it out with you, we're definitely happy to help on all elements of accessibility. Awesome. Thanks, Angela. Teresa says, does this product work with integrated phone conference calling? So you can record phone conference calls, if that's kind of what you're wondering. ILOS enables you to record, again, your audio through your mic, but also system audio, so it's getting played back through your headphones. And so you can capture both pieces there, which is great if you're trying to record a conference call or things like that. Oh, good question, gang. Any other thoughts on this one here? Yeah, Jody says, what's involved in a pilot? Great question, Jody. Let's do this. So I'd love to follow up. The pilot is a great route. So basically, with ILOS, you can get access for your entire institution for a full year for $1,000 a month, and you're going to get unlimited recording, storage, hosting, and access to our captioning service. We'll get you a fixed bucket of minutes just for the pilot to test things out, and from there, you can really see what video can do at your campus, or maybe if you already have an idea, that some folks will go right into an actual plan. But for that $1,000 a month, you can get your program off the ground from a video standpoint and get your content Section 508 compliant. So it's a real popular option. And like we mentioned, you get an additional 1,000 minutes, no extra charge. So that is a pretty good piece. And again, just one of the ways we're trying to bring captioning and video right together. Does that help on that side, Jody? Happy to draft that up and send over a quick recap on that side, on the pilot side specifically after the webinar here. Yeah, Bridget says, well, what if I've got existing videos, Sean? How do I get them captioned? Do I need to do something new? Yeah, so in terms of your question here, Bridget, basically you can upload as many videos as you've got previously directly into iLos. It's a simple drag and drop upload process, and you can get all your content within us, in the first couple days you're using iLos. So we'll have folks that'll upload thousands of videos their first week. So definitely a really common way to go. You've already made your videos sometimes. You don't want to have to remake them. Let's just get them in the game. We'll take care of the hosting, the storage, and the captioning. Good stuff. Oh, and Jody says, do you have a list of other clients you're working with currently? Sure do. We can send that over your way. We work with the Nebraska system, so Lincoln and Omaha. We work with Wichita State, University of Tampa. So wide variety of schools, all shapes and sizes, from community colleges up to larger institutions. And I'll kick that over here, Jody, with a quick recap. Yeah, so Tom says, hey, what about the captioning limits? You mentioned there's a bucket of captioning minutes. And so with the traditional pilot, you're going to get 2,000 minutes of CC, and that's with our normal rates. Now, since you attended the webinar, you'd get an extra 1,000 minutes right on top of that. So you'd be at 3,000 minutes. Awesome, gang. Well, good stuff. Well, hey, so I'm going to follow up with a few folks individually. So Jody, I'll shoot you that information. Bridget will connect. And actually, I think you're already connected with one of my colleagues, but I'll relay some of this information so we can follow up on kind of the uploading front and how that all works. And then Thomas, we'll connect as well, right after this here on the pilot and kind of what's encompassing there. Really excited though, gang. Thanks so much for coming out and making it happen. Again, if you've got any questions, I'm a resource. Feel free to shoot me an email. I'm always happy to help when it comes to accessibility, and really looking forward to see what we can do. Awesome. Thanks so much, Bridget. Thanks for coming out. Likewise, Jody. Hey, thank you. Hey, Michelle. Thank you as well. Good stuff.